Well, ladies and gentlemen, after a long wait, Spider-Man 2 is finally in our hands. The long-awaited sequel to both Spider-Man and also Spider-Man Miles Morales is finally here after 5 years since the first game in the franchise. Of course, there was the spin-off in between, but is it worth the wait? I'll make you wait all of whatever 20 seconds into the video to tell you yes, it was absolutely worth the wait. And I will also go ahead and say right off the bat that this is probably going to go down as my game of the year. I think this game is phenomenal. I do have some nitpicks to make, but largely I have nothing but great things to rave about with this game. So I don't want to waste too much of our time before jumping right in. If you're new here and you end up liking the video, don't forget to smash that subscribe button. And if you like the video, as always, a like is appreciated as well. Without any further ado, guys, let's go ahead and hop right on in. As always with my reviews, I like to try to start things off with the story whenever possible, and in this game it is, so let's go ahead and talk about that. The story to Spider-Man 2 focuses on both Peter and Miles on kind of their own separate storylines that very much obviously line up with one another in a lot of ways. So you have Miles, who is having his kind of coming-of-age story. You know, Miles' high school experience is coming to an end, and he's needing to prepare for college and all of the things that come with that. Meanwhile, you have Peter, who is going through kind of a unique situation where his best friend Harry has magically come back after being absent from the first game with what they discovered was a illness. Now he's back, he's better than ever, and one thing leads to another, and Peter also gets his hands on the black suit, which, if you are at all familiar with that storyline, you know how that plays out, but it starts to cause him to act differently, and eventually leads to the inevitable with a certain villain showdown near the end. And their storylines very much converge, as Peter is Miles' mentor and acts as such throughout the game, and the decisions that are made by Peter really impact Miles, and vice versa, but I feel like it really does play, you know, when Peter has the black suit and having that dynamic with Miles really works for me and works in general, and I think was a really good way to implement the black suit storyline and really show the Peter arc during that. I also really liked that arc in general. You know, at first he still acts like he normally would, and mission by mission, slowly but surely, he starts to act more and more like Bully Maguire, and eventually, you know, it leads to him coming through on the other side, one way or the other. But yeah, again, their storylines are different. I like the way that they converge, and throughout the game, there's all sorts of just really fun, different set pieces, and, you know, the story takes twists and turns. Of course, the main villain to the game overall is Kraven, who comes into town searching for a hunt. He has, you know, he's coming to New York, and he's come to New York to kill people and to fight people, and he's looking for a hunt, he's looking for a fight, and he's coming after everybody. And so that leads to kind of kick off the story and set things on a very enjoyable path. I thought that the story was really enjoyable to this game, and I don't really have any nitpicks to be had with that. I would have liked maybe more Kraven. He was a cool villain, and I really don't think he was underutilized. I just really would have liked more of him. I do think, though, that Venom, he really only appears in like 3 story missions, and it's really good when he's there, you know, quality over quantity and all, but I would have liked to see more of him as well. Moving on, though, we'll go ahead and talk about the characters in general. We do see a lot of characters returning, but the emphasis is mostly on the dynamics between Peter and Miles. You do also have MJ playing a crucial role, and Peter's relationship with her is very critical. Same with, you know, you kind of have Peter and MJ, their relationship. Harry comes back, and you can really see the friendship between those two, and it's really one of my favorite parts of the game, is seeing those two interact and the friendship that they have. And then, of course, on Miles' end, you have his relationship with his mom, his relationship with his best friend Genki, and Haley from his own game, who comes back for this one, and you get to see their relationship really evolve over the course of the game. And I really like the focus that this game has on its characters. I feel like it's a very character-driven story. Especially, again, I mentioned the Black Suit arc and how, you know, that impacts Peter's relationships and dynamics with these people, and the ultimate kind of results that come from that I would not obviously dare talk about in this review, but it's a very character-driven story all the same and all around. Of course, talking about characters, I think we might as well go ahead and talk about the villains. This game has some crazy fun villains and boss fights. I think that this is a big step up from the first game. If you've seen my review for the first game, I believe I mentioned that while I liked the bosses themselves, I was a little disappointed in the actual implementation of the boss fights. So in the first game, a lot of it comes down to you'll fight Vulture and Electro at the same time. You'll fight Scorpion and Rhino at the same time. In this game, there's none of that. And they all kind of get their time to shine. I'm not obviously going to spoil everybody in the game, however, the opening level does feature a fight against the Sandman, and that's one of the best opening fights in a video game I've ever played. I probably put way too much of that fight in the footage for this video, but it's just such a cool, fun fight that takes quite literally 20 minutes, and it's really just one of the best fights I've played in any of these Spider-Man games so far. There was also, of course, as you can imagine, some of the more obvious bosses like Kraven and Venom, as well as the Lizard, who was shown off in a lot of the promotional material. And then outside of that, you'll just kind of have to trust me that there's some fun bosses. Not going to spoil who that would be. Moving on, and kind of looping into that, there's also side quests in this game, and the side quests are pretty phenomenal. You have, I would argue, a lot of these side quests are as good, or in some cases, I would argue that the side quests are up there for the best part of this game, is what I'm trying to say. Side quests are phenomenal. And in a lot of cases, they're way more important than you would think. A lot of the side quests are stuff that are very much going to impact the future of this franchise going forward, and are purely side quests because they don't fit the overall narrative of the main story, I would think. I'm obviously not going to spoil the story-related ones, but there's a couple, off the top of my head I can think of two, that are very obviously setting up villains for what I'm assuming would inevitable Spider-Man 3. And I would recommend, if you're playing this game, whenever you see a side quest get unlocked, that you go play that one then, because that's usually when I feel like you're meant to play it, as far as what lines up with the story. I would highly recommend playing all of the side content in this game. I did platinum it, and I think that a lot of the side quests are really good. And outside of there being actual bosses to the side quests, you of course also have some focused on other villains that really probably won't impact the future of the franchise. I just really think that there's a lot there and good variety. But on top of all those side quests, there is also the APRA quests that are back from Spider-Man Miles Morales. So these are little one-off side missions. They don't really impact the story. They don't really impact the future of the franchise, I would think. But boy, do these like to hit you sometimes. One of these in particular is there's one that focuses on a grandpa in the park, and these are both just gonna have to be kind of trust me. If you know, sort of things that I won't spoil. But then also the Howard side quests. So Grandpa, I think his screen name was Grandpa Earl, and the Howard side quests both are some of the best pieces of this entire game, and I would very much recommend searching those out if you haven't already while playing it. And again, just in general, to touch on it, the side quests are just really fun, and really enjoyable for the most part, and the ones that aren't enjoyable are more emotional, so, they're still good. It's just, I don't enjoy watching people suffer. There's that. But I do think that this sets up a lot of stuff for the next game, both the main story and the side quests. So I think that the future of the franchise is looking very bright and very enjoyable for sure. Moving on now, I want to touch on some of the gameplay elements of the game. So the general gameplay stays very similar to that of the first games. However, it does do a lot to spruce things up. On a base level, it's pretty much one-to-one with the first game. Just very fluent. If it ain't broke, don't fix it sort of thing. And if you like the gameplay in the first games, you'll like the gameplay here. It's pretty much as simple as that. However, it does do quite a bit to spruce things up, starting with the parry system. So now they've implemented the ability to parry certain attacks from enemies that you couldn't do in the first games. And I think that that's a really cool idea. Maybe the game didn't need it, sure, but it's still something cool, and it gives you more variety and options in the gameplay. So when an enemy goes in for an attack, sometimes the screen will kind of, they're above their head, you'll see like a little flicker of light, and that's kind of your hint that you can parry that, and that usually results in you getting a good combo off. You kind of also have to get used to doing this for some of the bosses because they can get pretty tough at times without it. There's also, of course, the gadgets returning from the first games, however, very differently here. You now have a gadget wheel kind of in the bottom corner, and the gadgets are not really as expanded on, I guess, as in the first game. So you only get the handful of gadgets here. There's less gadgets in this game, which means you got to be a bit more strategic about how you use them. I don't mind. I actually found myself using gadgets more in this game than in the earlier ones, and that was, they really made, these new ones make more of an impact, I think, in my general gaming experience than at least the old gadgets did. You also have these new abilities, so if you played Miles Morales, he still keeps his venom abilities. However, Peter kind of has his counter to that. So for the most part, for the general majority of the earlier chunk of the game, Peter has these 4 arms that protrude from the back, kind of like the Iron Spider or Doc Ock, which is where I'm sure he took his inspiration from. I'm pretty sure he references that at some point. And Peter is able to use all sorts of abilities because of that are pretty fun and kind of help balance his gameplay with Miles' gameplay. However, this game is at its best when you are either playing as Miles with the Venom abilities or playing as Peter when he has the symbiote abilities. That is my favorite way to play this game when possible. You have, instead of using the 4 arms and those abilities, you have a completely new set of abilities that comes with the symbiote suit. And whereas Miles is able to use his Venom abilities to do a burst of energy, the symbiote suit is able to enter a sort of rage mode that allows you to really do more damage and more combos and feel like more of a badass. And I have found myself, even having 100% completed it and having platinumed it, I will go search out random crimes just so that I can keep using the symbiote suit. It is so fun. That being said, I do want to touch on the open world now, because I mentioned these random crimes. And the open world is very much expanded from the first games, whereas in the first games you could only go to a good chunk of New York, but any time that you needed to cross a bridge, it would lock you out. Now you can cross those bridges, and the map is quite literally twice as big in this game, and I had so much fun exploring all the new areas and revisiting all the old ones. It is a huge map, and a huge step up from the map of the first game. I feel like there was a lot of story emphasis on spending time in new areas you hadn't been to, and while it was balanced pretty well, I also just enjoyed being able to explore new areas of the map, or kind of having more of a dire excuse to do so. And part of the open world fun that I found is, obviously you can play as the 2 Spider-Men in this game, and you can choose which one you want to play as in the open world when you're going around. They all also have like their own content when you're doing things, so like Miles has a certain side quest line, more so his is like collectible stuff that Peter can't do, vice versa. When you need to switch, you can switch on the fly. Fast travel is insane, I'll touch on that in a minute. However, when you're playing as a Spider-Man in the open world, and let's say you want to do a randomized crime, the other Spider-Man can run into you and you can interact with them. So like I found myself constantly doing randomized crimes where let's say I'm playing as Peter, all of a sudden Miles swings in and decides to start helping out. I thought that was a really cool way to implement a kind of new tactic, and I just thought it was cool. It makes sense that you'd run into each other, and I like that they implemented it the way you do, or the way they did. And also, fast travel is insane in this game. It's instantaneous. You can fast travel anywhere on the map. It's super cool. I don't know why you'd ever want to do it, though, because swinging around is so much fun. You can also web wing glide around, which really helps speed things up. And I really feel like with how good the traversal is in this game, I'll have a hard time ever going back to the traversal of the first games in comparison. The web wings are so much fun, and there's so much fun to be had in this game in general with the gameplay and the story and everything. If I had to pick things to nitpick, I would just ask for maybe a bit of a longer story, but I feel like what we have is really good as well. With that being said, guys, I think it's probably no surprise that this game is getting a score of a 10 out of 10 for me. It's also my game of the year. It's such a phenomenal game. I'm really looking forward to them introducing New Game Plus, so I have an excuse to replay it again. With that being said, thank you so much for watching today's video. If you liked, don't forget to smash that like button, and if you're new here, go ahead and subscribe. If you've played Spider-Man 2, feel free to sound off in the comments with your thoughts and opinions on the game, and let's discuss and see how we feel about certain things together. I obviously try not to spoil too much in these reviews, but, please be respectful in the comments of people that haven't had a chance to play it yet. Alright guys, thanks again for watching, I'll see you guys in the next one.